Okay, Peter, you're now invited to rebut. You have 6 minutes.
Thank you. Always nice to hear Edmund Burke being quoted, even when it's the devil quoting scripture. Where are we? What about alcohol then? It always comes up. There are several points that one would make, certainly rather more than... I know that the old rule of journalism, again, I keep referring to The Economist, people might think I don't like it, but one of its greatest editors once described the fundamental principle of journalism as being exaggerate, then simplify. Or was it perhaps the other way round? My position on alcohol has been a little bit simplified by Tim here. There are several points about it. One, the undoubted one being that it has existed legally in our culture for thousands of years, and that therefore to try to stamp it out by legal means would be extremely difficult. Now, it will be pointed out to me by somebody, if I don't deal with this first of all, that there was a period when cannabis and various other illegal drugs were legal in this country, and this is indeed true, but they never achieved anything remotely resembling the mass use which alcohol had achieved. I would also point out that it simply isn't true that everybody has always been prepared to drink, and it is an extraordinary hole in the knowledge of the history of our country, suffered by many people, that they simply know nothing now of the huge temperance movements which were at the heart of much of both Labour and Liberal politics before 1914, and which I believe Lloyd George was actually paying a debt to when in 1915 he used the Emergency Powers Defence of the Realm Act to introduce the alcohol licensing laws which existed up until Margaret Thatcher's government were persuaded, assumed by very powerful lobbying, to abandon. These were more effective than any form of alcohol prohibition I have ever seen, and I have spent time both in Iran and in the Gorbachev era of the Soviet Union, when the state used a great deal of power in both cases to try and stamp out alcohol. In Tehran, alcohol was very readily available, and in the Soviet Union, while you might occasionally get your vodka served in a teapot and poured into a teacup, which does make it taste funny, you could always get it, and the main effect of the alcohol ban was to create a major shortage of sugar, because people were using sugar to make vodka in their bathtubs. So I don't think that alcohol prohibition, where it is legal and widely used, is likely to be effective, but I do think there are many, many steps that one could take, and indeed I've seen, and in the trade of journalism you do see many, many terrible personal tragedies caused by the drinking of alcohol, and I don't take it lightly or see it something that one should laugh at or think could be spared from any sort of control. But it is not in the same position either culturally or legally as cannabis, and we are not starting from the same place. So you don't need to say that the one problem can be solved by the same means. Secondly, I'm accused of utopianism and of attempting to stamp out the use of cannabis completely. I'm the reverse of utopian. I've lived long enough to know that utopianism is a terrible mistake. Utopia is only ever approached across a sea of blood and is never reached. What I aim for is serious amelioration. I think at the moment there is a substantial risk to many young people from the widespread use of cannabis, and I think that we should do something about it before more lives are destroyed, not just their lives, but the lives of their families. And I think it would be irresponsible not to do so, especially since we have the tool of the law still in our hands. Were we to do as the drugs campaigners wish, and to relax and get rid of the laws, putting them back into place would be immensely difficult. They know that. That's why they're now concentrating so much effort and so much money onto getting, first of all, what they call regulation, then decriminalisation, and then the changing of the international treaties which prevent us from actually legalising it, after which, of course, it will be on commercial sale. And there will be enormous interests as powerful as big tobacco and big alcohol fighting alongside all the others for its retention, even while people are going mad as a result of using it. Now, and if you doubt that it's possible for people with major commercial interests to be unworried about the side effects of the drugs they sell, then just look at the activities of the big pharmaceutical companies now and see how responsible you think they are. The point about Sweden, well, I'm not going to argue about the details of Sweden, because this is my policy, is a policy for Britain. But I will say this, that Sweden began by having a liberal policy, and after its experience of it, reversed that policy and sought to try and control cannabis, and it's my belief that drug use in that country is lower than in other European countries. All comparisons between different countries are incredibly difficult. Those of the United States are more difficult than almost any because it's such a different country to this one. And I don't want to get mired into this. What I wish to compare this country with is what it used to be like and what it could be like if we took the matter seriously here. The points made about the use of cannabis declining after the introduction of the cannabis warning, I would issue a warning of my own here. And I would refer people who are interested in the subject to a posting I put on my blog this week about the Magistrates Association revealing that very large numbers of quite serious crimes, including, and this is incredible to me and ought to be incredible to you, including rape, are now being dealt with by the police with cautions. That is to say, nothing whatever happens to somebody who admits to rape at all. And many, many other crimes which you would consider to be extremely serious. All these are listed on my blog. The Magistrates Association supplied me with the immensely laudable work they did with freedom of information to get this stuff out of the government. Many, many very serious crimes are being dealt with either by cautions or by fines, many of which go unpaid. And they cannot be reopened once these penalties have been imposed. So what happens in these circumstances, if crimes of this magnitude are being treated with such levity by the legal system, by the police, how many crimes are being completely ignored? Now, anybody who attends the Notting Hill Carnival or any major pop festival will have observed the police simply ignoring the smoking of an illegal drug within 10 feet of them. They don't want to know. So any statistic which says that cannabis use is declining in this country, and given that since the drug is illegal, it's impossible to measure its use in any rational or reliable way, has to be mistrusted, and I believe is part of what used to be known in the Soviet era by Soviet cynics as the bikini effect, namely that government statistics were more notable and more interesting for the things that they concealed than for the things which they revealed. And this is increasingly the case with any politically important statistic in this country, whether it be examination results or cannabis or crime. So no utopianism is involved here. I have been asked, though I'm so far from political power that's almost ludicrous to contemplate it, I have been asked what I would propose for people caught in possession of cannabis, and my position would be a genuine caution for a first offence, that is to say one which stayed on the books and was recorded, which would be followed on a second offence by imprisonment in a serious prison, that is to say an austere one where people would not be able to get access to drugs for 6 months, and sentences then increasing for subsequent offences further on from that. But it's not my belief that if you had a serious penal regime for cannabis that most people would risk the bother of going to prison. They'd simply stop using it. It's not worth it. And what on earth would be worth risking 6 months imprisonment for that cannabis has? It simply is not worth it. It's a trivial drug whose effects are trivial and make the people who take it more trivial. It's not worth campaigning for. And to compare it, as is often done by some of its defenders, with the liberties of speech, thought and freedom of assembly, which we've fought for over centuries, is frankly ludicrous.